Hey everybody, this is Greg with Medical Muscle. And in this video series, I'm going to be talking about how I got honors in every term in the first 2 years at St. George University, in the basic sciences. And specifically in this video, I'm going to talk about how I got honors in term 1. All right, so to start, I had a gap year between my undergrad and starting at SGU. So during that gap year, I thought, okay, well, I got to utilize that time, not just for fun, but to help my brain during that period. So what I decided to do was TA in anatomy. I think it helped me when I started term 1 because there was a lot of anatomy. MSK is like the third exam that you take at St. George. I don't think it helped tremendously. I thought it was just a good reinforcer of some kind of material. I think it's smart. If you have a gap year, do something that you like. Like I enjoyed anatomy, and I was getting paid for it as a TA. But I would say if you can kind of keep your brain busy with some kind of scholastic thing, if you have a gap year, it'd be really smart. So I started in August of 2020, and so I started in August of 2020, and I had this gap year, and I thought, okay, well, how can I get myself ready for medical school? Like, how can I get ready for how to study? And I was probably doing like what you're doing, is looking at YouTube videos and seeing how students, how can you optimize your studying going into medical school? And one of the big things that kept coming up was Anki. And I was convinced that that's what I was going to use when I started school. So like in May of 2020, before I started my first term, I downloaded Anki and I started practicing how to make cards. I think that's a really good idea because Anki is not an intuitive tool. It's not too complicated, but there's a little learning curve. And what I did was I had bought the physical book of first aid, and I would just make Anki cards and practice using that. I downloaded the Anki app for the phone, and I had it on my computer, and I was just practicing all these different things with Anki. And I think that was a really smart thing. If you're planning on using Anki, I really suggest getting some time to practice. You don't have to start months ahead, but just get like a week of practice before you start, just so you know how everything goes. Because once the term starts, it's gonna come so fast, and you're not gonna have time to learn this material and learn the material and learn Anki at the same time. Okay? So now a few months before school started, let's say June, July, St. George sent out some information, some pre-study material that they wanted me to cover before starting school. They sent it to everybody. It covers basic physiology, basic biochem, genetics, things like that. I would say that's probably one of the best things you can do, okay? The absolute best, because the first 2 exams, the FTM exams that you're gonna have in term 1, cover a lot of the same things. So you basically, if you cover that stuff over the summer, when the term starts, it's now a second pass. It's just a review for you. Well, technically, you should have seen this already, so this should be your third pass or whatever. But it primes your brain for this exact same material. And what's nice is when you're looking through that material that St. George sends you, it's presented in the same way that they present their lecture slides. So it also helps you get used to how they present information. I thought it was helpful. I didn't finish all the material, but that's how I think I kicked ass on my first exam. So my mentality of going into medical school was that I just wanted to get a C. That's a little background. I just wanted to pass. That was all I cared about. That was my minimum. And then I took my first test, and my grade was a 91. I was so freaking pumped. I was like, okay, well, cool. Now I can actually dominate this rather than just try to pass. So I was really inspired to keep pushing. And I think, because I was so scared of how I was going to do, I think that's what helped me do better. Encouraged me to look at other resources and things like that. So I got an A that first exam, and I have to say, and I said this in other videos, it's really important to ace the first exam in every term. The reason is, right, so you have your first exam. every exam after that is going to have, I think, like 10% cumulative questions from previous exams. So they're going to ask other stuff from previous exams. So the first exam is the only one where you can basically predict everything that you're going to see. I mean, obviously, you got to go through all the material, but what you're going to be tested on is stuff that you just covered, okay? But as the tests go, it's going to have 10% of random things that you haven't seen in months, and it gets harder to get those questions sometimes. So I say get a good score off the bat, because that's the most predictable material that you're going to see, okay? And kicking butt on the first exam gives you a buffer from when you start getting a little burned out as the term goes. All right, so that's really important. So the way I went through lecture material, it was very inefficient. As the lecture was going, I would just sit there and do Anki. I wouldn't really pay attention. I thought I could do lectures like I used to in undergrad, take notes, but I just found that the lectures were way too fast. So instead, I would do Anki while the lecture was going, kind of listen in a little bit. And then after, I would watch the recording and then make Anki cards of that. It usually took me 3 to 4 hours per lecture. That is overkill. I do not suggest doing that, but that's what I did. I moved super slow. It still paid off. I aced basically almost every exam, but it was slow and painful. What I also did with people in my small group is that I met up and we would meet online and quiz each other. I had one group that I'd meet twice a week and another group I'd meet twice a week. So for 4 hours a week, I was just discussing content with other students. And guess what? The people who I was studying with also got honors, okay? I think it really helped. They were quizzing each other on material that we covered that week. Really good thing to do. So just to break down on some of my exams, I got a 91 on the first exam. I got a 93 on the second. On MSK, I got an 89. So that's when I got a little freaked out because MSK was really hard. And then the next one after that was an 89 and a 90. Okay, so I barely squeezed by at the end of the term. I barely squeezed by with a 90. But obviously, because I did so well in the beginning with a 91 and a 93, getting 89s and 88s was not like, it didn't hurt me that bad. And on the OSCE, I got an 86, and the lab exam, I got an 83. Those two exams, they're not high point, but they're not easy. Just because they're low point doesn't mean that they're going to be an easier topic. The OSCE was hard, or if you have the OSEX, if you're online. So do not just hope that you're going to ace those, because it's really unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get sometimes. The questions can be broad. They're going to cover material that you've seen the entire term. So what you really want to do is ace those block exams, because that's what you can predict. You have more control over that stuff, and there's a lot more points involved. All right, so some things that I would have done differently starting that term. These are the resources. I would suggest don't rewatch the lectures. Yeah, it's great. It's good for your memory retention to listen to a teacher, but I think it's just so inefficient in time. What I would do is read the lecture slides before you start. Listen to the lecture, go in there, listen to it, pay attention to the topics that are being covered, and then go back through the lecture slides with first aid and then some other resource like Boards and Beyond or Pathoma or Sketchy or something like that, okay? I suggest getting some synthesized video content. The lectures at St. George are not bad, they're great, but the lectures are 50 minutes long, and sometimes they're really slow, and sometimes they're not presented in a way that could be more synthesized or said differently to help with your whole understanding. So I wish I did Boards and Beyond. I wish I used first aid. I didn't use first aid in basically any term until term 5, which was stupid because first aid has a ton of mnemonics, okay? So that would be a really good thing to do. And I also wish I did more questions, okay? I wish I looked at old IMCQs. I wish I reviewed, the ESOP quizzes more. I wish I did more because I think that would have helped my score, and I wouldn't have to just sit there and study longer. I could just go through the question banks because, doing the questions, you get to see how you're going to be asked the material. You know, you're studying this material really hard, you're trying to understand it, but it's like, how are you going to be asked that? Okay? So, those are some things that I would have done differently. The last thing, small groups. I way over prepared for small group in term 1. I think in general, I just worked way too hard. I made too many Anki cards. I worked way too fucking hard. I would suggest, you know, don't put a ton of effort into small groups. You know, be somewhat prepared, but it's okay if you don't know every single detail, because in reality, it's going to take away from time that you can take studying for your block exam. I mean, that's the most important thing that you need to study for. And, you know, a small group is already an hour and a half out of your day. So don't add like 2, 3, 4 more hours of like trying to prep for that. Okay, and I noticed the people that prepped like crazy and who knew basically everything. I know people who were so smart and quick and just knew every answer in small group, ended up having to retake terms because, like, I think that's inefficient. Okay, yeah, it's great to be prepared for that stuff, but you know, sometimes it's material that's not going to be covered in an exam. Okay, all right, so that's what I did in term 1, and I got more videos to come. Hope you guys kick some butt.